Right. Welcome. Good evening. Good morning, everyone. My name is Karolina Mejcu. I welcome you on behalf of the Polish Studies Association, PSA, of which I'm the co-president, together with Jan Musekamp, who's also here. And just very briefly, most of you probably know who we are, but in case you don't, we are a network of scholars working on Polish topics, very broadly conceived. And not everyone is a scholar either. We also have other professions, journalists represented, and other artists, translators, anything you can imagine. And if you're not a member yet, I will post a link to our website, and you can find out more about us and our activities, and join if you are not yet a member. So with that, I think I will hand over to Elisa Maria Hima, who's also a member of the PSA board and who has organized this discussion tonight.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Carolina, for introducing PSA. And thank you all for being here. So yeah, my name is Elisa Maria Hima. I'm from Freie Universität Berlin. And I have the pleasure to do the moderation, to chair this discussion tonight. And just a brief overview what we are going to do tonight or today. So first I will give a brief introduction of the author and also the discussants, a short bio I would like to read to you. And then Michał will say a few words about the book, about the inspiration he had, and about the gap his book actually intends to close. And then we already continue with the comments, first by Joanna Wawrzyniak, then Florian Peters, who actually already joined us, great, and Tomasz Zarycki. And then afterwards, we will have some time for Q&A, and yeah, around about 7 p.m. or 12 p.m., we would like to close the discussion. So I start with our author today, Michał Przeperski. He's an assistant professor at the Institute of History of the Polish Academy of Sciences. He's also the spokesperson of the Museum of Polish History in Warsaw. He specializes in the history of Central Europe in the 20th century, particularly in processes of transition and transformation. Our first discussant is Joanna Wawrzyniak. She's a university professor of sociology and the founding director of the Center for Research on Social Memory in Warsaw. Her current projects relate to the memories of socialism, neoliberal transformation, deindustrialization, and decolonization of heritage. Her most recent books include the co-edited work Remembering the Neoliberal Turn, Economic Change and Collective Memory in Eastern Europe after 1989, which was published with Routledge in 2023. Florian Peters is a historian who specializes in the modern history of East Central Europe. He's based at Friedrich Schiller University Jena. He has a PhD from Humboldt University Berlin, and he has published widely on politics of memory, social history, and property transformations in late socialism and after. His most recent book in German is Von Solidarność zur Schocktherapie, from Solidarność to shock treatment, shock therapy, how capitalism arrived to Poland, which was published in 2023. And in this book, he explores the emergence of capitalism and the roots of neoliberal breakthrough in post-socialist Poland. And last but not least, Tomasz Zarycki. He's a sociologist and social geographer, professor at the University of Warsaw, and a deputy director of the Robert Zając Institute for Social Studies. His main fields of interest include the historical sociology of elites, sciences, and social geography. His books include, for example, a title published in 2014, Ideologies of Eastness in Central and Eastern Europe, or The Polish Elite and Language Sciences, A Perspective of Global Historical Sociology. So I think you already have an idea why we invited these discussants to discuss our book today. And I would like to hand over now to Michał, who would like to say a few words about his publication.
Thank you very much, Elisa, and I'm truly grateful that you made it. I'm thankful that you want to spend some time with us discussing this tiny book of mine. I must say that I really like to talk about that book, so I'll try to be as concise as possible at the same time. I must say that I've been interested in researching transformation and the processes of transition, as Isa already mentioned, well, for quite some time. And I found myself in a peculiar situation when I started as a political historian, and then swiftly found myself in a situation when, okay, I think that dealing with social history is not only more interesting at this point, but also as it goes to the gaps in the historiography, in the scholarly research. There are a lot as it comes to the social history of transformation. And I found myself in a situation again when I thought to myself, okay, someone will finally at some point have to write like a, not necessarily concise, but the social history of transformation in Poland. And okay, I thought to myself, maybe I'm not the one to do that. Maybe I should just try to write a sketch. But then I realized that, well, I ended up with something more than a sketch, but less than a synthesis. We still need one. But at the same time, I must say that at this very moment, I'm researching on, let's say, an attempt at creating a comparative perspective of the transformation, the very complex processes of transformation in Poland and in Hungary. And there are many reasons for choosing those two countries. And the very contemporary history, like the very, very contemporary history, may serve as an interesting and important point of reference. The title in Polish is Dziki Wschód, which should be translated as Wild East. And this is sort of, I'll be blatantly open with you. I think it's sort of cheesy way of describing this process, but I decided to do that exactly in that manner because very many people with whom I talked about the 90s, the moment of transformation, exactly 80s, late 80s, early 90s, used to use this very sort of wording. Dziki Wschód, Dziki Zachód. Some people very directly quoted in the book tended to say, okay, exactly 93 or 94 was the moment for me when the Wild East ended, and they went on with the explanation of why. And that's the reason why we have this Wild East in the title. At the same time, I think that this is a sort of nice, sort of cool game play with the very expression of Wild West. To a large extent, the thing that is described by Asia Wawrzyniak and others in the book of neoliberal turn, I'm writing about exactly the same things. And this neoliberal turn may be seen from very many perspectives. That is the one, for example, used by Florian, which is more like intellectual history, the history of discourse. I rather try to be the one looking at the great history through the lenses of ordinary people, as we all are ordinary people, but through the lenses of everyday Poles and through their experiences. I try to draw some main lines. So, like, why 1986? Why 1993? Are those points? It is also a sort of choice I had to make. 1986 is exactly the year that I was born, which certainly is not the main reason for me starting exactly at this year. But at the same time, it was the last year of stability of the Polish People's Republic, and 1993, maybe 1993, 1994, at the turn of 93 and 1994, I think that there are elements of early elements of stability in the social situation of the Third Republic, so like Trzecia Rzeczpospolita in Poland, and I Let me just add very briefly a couple more elements. I thought that what really was important was to jump over 1989. I think that 1989 is so much overused, the explanation of what transformation, transition in Poland and generally in Central Europe was. So I thought to myself that it's really what we really need is to find some other points of reference, and that's the reason why 1989 is not in the title of this book. And I mentioned already the fact that social history is something that we very much need. Let me also be very like accurate in stating that I treat this book as a sort of first step towards writing an excessive social history of transformation in Poland. And then again, as I have already mentioned, I really think that what we need is comparative perspective on Central. In the end, also in a broader manner on the history of transformation in Europe, because the question which falls without the content of this book of mine, but the question which I think really is very important and very interesting is not only how Central Europe was transformed by the neoliberal turn, but also how the neoliberal turn or the general reality of the Western Europe was shaped by the fact that Central Europe became, no longer was the other Europe, but the part of Europe just like that, just part of Europe. And I think that at some point it will be worth thinking of preparing the English version of the book. And this is also one of the reasons why I'm so very grateful to Elisa for this idea of having today's meeting. So I'll be very interested in your insights of what you think, whether this topic is at all interesting to you, and which perspectives could be like useful, I don't know, for your teaching, for any sort of things you could use this book or read from which perspective you may read it. So let me maybe stop at this point. Thank you very much. I'm very open, very much ready to listen all the insights. Thanks.
Thank you, Michał, for opening our discussion and for the background. And I would like to suggest that we just continue with the comments right now, as they were also listed on the poster. And the first would be Joanna Wawrzyniak with her comment on Michał Przeperski's Dziki Wschód.
Yeah, thank you so much for the invitation. It's an honor. I'm not a member of PSA as yet, so I gather that I got my chance today. So I will follow to the website, Caroline. We'll do that. So just let me maybe introduce my own positionality in that discussion. So beyond knowing Michał well, I'm a sociologist, historian, but above all a memory scholar, like by what I do. And this is from that perspective I mainly would like to talk about the book. And where I do see the contribution of the book to the debate about how the transformation is being remembered, and the struggles with the memory of the transformation. They started already in the 90s, and they have the, let's say, reopenings, and they had the reopenings during the last 30 years. But first of all, I think that one of the book's absolutely great strengths, and this is what I really would like to to highlight is its readability and narrative energy. It really reads very well. So it takes seriously the need to make history accessible, which is all the more important because transformation is no story that everyone agrees on. And I do like the strategy of Michał just to put the ordinary people's stories in it. So in that sense, to make the book like a story from within, and not only the story about how not the closing of the story of the transformation, but giving the voice to the actors of the time. I do think that the framing of the 90s as Wild East is clever, but it's also controversial, and to that I will come back in a moment. But what is another book's strength is that it resists this temptation to write transformations solely from the top down. And, as both a sociologist and a historian, I kind of know the sociological research on the transformation, how it developed in the 90s. And now I try to follow what historians do, like when they try to rewrite what we know about the 90s. And still, most of the, history accounts of the 90s are all the time the political history. So again, that book is really a welcome intervention in this very, rigid political history account, with bringing ordinary people and not only elite and institutions. So what we learn, we have this ordinary people navigating the uncertain world, and this is what is in this book. So we'll have small entrepreneurs, pensioners, consumers in exploding markets. And they're like really participants in that process, often ambivalent. They improvise, they adapt, and you can really see, from the book, that's the story of the 90s. So it captures not only what happened, but also how it felt, for the people underground, unstable and deeply disorienting for many. But now that brings me to let's say what I think is this. What we can discuss about the book is the choice of the title, right? So it's both evocative and risky, I think. It resonates with the chaotic and improvised character of the early transition. And it also opens a window how the period is remembered today. So when we use some kind of the pictures, I don't know, of the things which we find exotic from today's perspective, it brings, of course, it brings attention, but also it brings question if we really want to do that. So in memory studies, we talk about mnemonic regimes or narrative templates, and the Wild East is one such a template, which conveys lawlessness, risk, and raw opportunity. And it also invites comparisons with the American frontier myth, another story about building order out of chaos with winners and losers. And of course, we have to be careful with such form. Wild East can carry unintended echoes of colonial thinking. That's one problem which I have with the title, because it suggests backwardness or exoticism from today's perspective. I do think that Michał handles is super reflexively and does not romanticize the chaos and really use that to foreground the contingency, agency, and improvisations which were there, and it's a great asset of the book. So it kind of becomes a tool for thinking, not a verdict. But if I was to translate that book into English, I would choose another title. So, and then the another, I think the great strength of the book is the politics of remembrance transformation. So, we are still, as I've mentioned at the beginning, as you all know absolutely well, we are still in this kind of the in between the two myths, of the transformation, which were once called by Mitchell Orenstein and Goetze in the book about the therapy of the shock, like, or what we learned, or taking stock from the shock, when they said that, you know, there are two great narratives, like, of the transformation. One is the so-called J curve, which they say, so that it had to be bad at the very beginning. So all the austerity measures were absolutely necessary to get better relatively quickly. That quickly for some countries came, but not that quickly as it was expected. Like, so there are, like, clearly the countries which are the winners of the transformation today, as Poland is, but that has taken 30 years, like, to benefit from the macroeconomic reforms of the 90s. For others, it didn't happen. So also because there was no European Union and some other factors. And then there is another narrative about the 90s, which is that it was a catastrophe. So that was that everything was so bad, right? And then they both clash in the public discourse. So this is what I really like about that book, is that it just tells a different story. Like, so of course it tells the story of the macroeconomic reforms. You have the elite actors and you have the decision, but it also tells the social story in that, which is ambivalent, ambiguous, dynamic, and so on, without necessarily taking part in those discussions, or rather showing how the picture and how what was going on was again, sorry for just repeating myself, was dynamic. And even you know, lots of improvisation and contradiction on the ground. So trying to conclude, you know, in memory studies, we deal with not how it was, like how the history really was, but how with the uses of the past today. So if I would like to complement the book, I would say that Michał handles the past with care. We get a fantastic picture of the past, but still you can see the picture is still open. And that it brings to the debate about the transformation a lot of dimensions which are kind of missed, non-existing with these two main narratives, which is that it was really bad or it was really good. Right? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anna, for your comment. Next one is Florian Peters.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much for inviting me. Hi, Micha. It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to say a few words about your book. And nonetheless, I will start not with your book, but with a recent PhD dissertation in sociology, which I have come across a few weeks ago, which was about forgotten strikes, or is about forgotten strikes at the turn of the 1980s and 1990s. I thought, wow, that's a great topic. Wow, interesting. In Poland, yeah. Written at the Polish University. I won't say anything more about that now. But then on the first page of that dissertation, I read that in this dissertation, the exploration of these events is only used as a pretext. That's so it's pretext, wyłącznie jako pretext for addressing broader issues and so on. And then there's all this sociological theorizing about strikes and so on. That's really interesting. And as I said before, I won't say anything more about this book now, but I wanted to start with that in order to expose or underline how important actually your approach is. Because and how important it is that we finally, and historians finally, start to approach this transformation area from a genuinely historical perspective. Because of course I'm really grateful for all the work done by colleagues such as Joanna Wawrzyniak and other sociologists, and this is a really important contribution for our understanding. Nonetheless, in the end, as I know from my everyday work in a big research cluster in Jena, which is actually guided by sociologists, sociologists are always in the end mostly interested in their theories, and the historical, or the empirical reality is rather serves as a material for understanding our present, or maybe a universalist the universalist social world in a better way. And that's why we actually desperately need genuinely historical approaches to this era we are talking about. And I was really happy to read your book in this context, because it's not only a great contribution in a historicizing this period, but even more, it brings a focus on the so-called big history of political changes that have been, of course, already analyzed to a certain extent by historians before, but on the social history of that era. And I completely agree with Joanna in that respect. This is a really important contribution, and I think it's even more important for the historical discourse. Than maybe for the social science discourse on transformation. I may go on a little bit in praising your book, because it is really, I can really also agree with Joanna that it is a really good read, and I really like to read it in many points. I really like the ironic allusions, most of which, or maybe many of which, even I as a German hopefully understood correctly, which might be actually a problem for translation to English for an international audience. That's why I'm pointing this out at this point. But I liked it very much. There's so many little punchlines in there, which really make it a good read. Even the idea to describe the implementation of the Balcerowicz plan from the point of view of the CBOS opinion polls is, I mean, this is maybe one of the parts which reads not as fluent as the others, because you have a lot of numbers there, but it's a great idea to turn around the perspective in this way. At the same time, not I of course, in order to make this a productive discussion, I won't stop with this praise, but also there were, of course, also some downsides in your book from my point of view, and maybe let me start with the most fundamental one, which is really for me this programmatic statement you make in the beginning, that this book is not really interested in creating a narration. Yeah, this is not about your book is not supposed to create narrations, and of course I understand that this is an important step back from not taking sides in the current politicized debates on this era, which is I think it's technically a good move, but from a point of view of historical understanding, it's maybe less convincing in the long run. Yeah, so I would have wished for more narration, for more synthesizing, actually, because that's actually what we as historians, I think, have to contribute to this debate. I mean, there is so much work, so much really interesting and good work by sociologists on that, but we historians need to offer something more, I would think so, and this cannot be only, so to speak, like compiling let's say even a colorful patchwork of different voices, contemporaneous voices, but also retrospective voices. This is of course the big strong side of your book, but I would have wished for a little bit more synthesizing and a little bit more clearer historicizing voice, so to speak. At a certain point, you even say, and this is actually at the point when you discuss the roundtable agreements or the current debates on that, politicized debates on that the only thing that what historians can do is to Kontakt towards Fakte. Yes, this is a very positivist approach to history, because of course in any choice you make by choosing a certain perspective, by integrating certain facts to your book and leaving out others, you will have already done more than only to show the facts as they, in a Rankian sense, as they wie es eigentlich gewesen ist. Yeah. So I would actually encourage you to not to stay on this positivist to a certain extent level, but really go a step further in synthesizing the anecdotal, in many cases, evidence in your book, and to bring maybe to give that more a framework which is more readable on the whole scale of the book, because now you have so many. Sometimes I had the impression you always go for the next interesting and really inspiring punchline. Yeah, you have short parts, and then you have a nice punchline, and you really think, well, yeah, that's cool, and nicely written and so on. But it remains less clear in how far these little punchlines contribute to a more complete and more historical correct maybe understanding of the transformation era. So on this part, there's also some points where I would actually disagree, but this is maybe not so important today. But just to maybe to give one more concrete example, you have this tendency to describe things from, or anecdotes, so to speak, from the late 1980s with quite clear wording, like this is absurd. This is no, Polska ważnie. Or for example, the idea of the Communist Party in the late 80s, to talk about civil society. That's a prawdziwy hit, yeah. So this is you tend to classify this in a very clear way as something which is maybe not intelligible from today's point of view, but I would say at this point the historian's work would start not simply to classify this as absurd or deviant or something, or to also to a certain extent give an exoticizing view on this exotic past reality, so to speak, but actually explaining how people came to think so, and came to act in the ways they have acted. And maybe this is the most important points I would have to add from my side. Maybe one last point. Actually, I didn't find in your book what's specifically Polish on this Transformacja po polsku. Yeah, would also be one last aspect, which is important, I think, for an international audience. You would actually. I would have loved to learn more about what you think actually is the Polish specifics in this case. And of course, I understand you in a book addressed to a Polish audience or a more popular audience. There's no space to have a broad comparison and so on. But nonetheless, this would be on my wish list as a historian interested in the broader picture of transformation in East Central Europe. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Florian. Maybe Michał will have some time to elaborate later on all these points. But first, I would like to hand over to Tomasz Zarycki with his comment on your book.
Thank you. I want to thank Michał for inviting me and writing the book, because it's actually, as already the first voices prove, the discussion about 89 is very much needed. We actually still don't have a clear vision of what happened in 89 and how to frame this this turning point. This is especially, I like this question which Michał asks, what should be the time frame for analysis of the fall of in Poland? And certainly there is no clear answer to this question, but asking it already, I think it's very important. So I really like this book posing those questions, for being in a way provocative, in the way it presents the history of the period. I see it as very anthropological. So it's like, let's say, naive in the best sense of the word. It really convincingly reconstructs this common sense of the era. For me, as a witness of this period, it really sounds very convincing. This is, in most cases, how more or less I remember it. But at the same time, being a sociologist, a structuralist sociologist, this narrative which Michał reconstructs, it's a point of reference for my critical readings of the period. So I would very briefly mention how I am myself trying to make sense of the same period in a way into this mainstream narratives which Michał has reconstructed. So first of all, my one dimension that I am trying to add is always this international dimension. Of course, Michał includes the Soviets, Gorbachev, and the Western actors, but in my provocative narrative, what they would be decisive. I would see this transition as a deal between Soviets and Americans, and Michał reconstructs this intelligentsia common sense, which what I see overemphasis on the agency of Poles, which makes this foreign actors almost invisible, and also the economic dimension not as prominent as I would see it. So I think that one could complement this like very Polish-centered, this anthropological view with much more broader international structuralist view, where both Soviets and Western actors, especially American, would be crucial. But still, I would also, I think, my personal perspective, because Michał's books is also personal partly, which I very much like, that he from time to time like refers to his experience, his family experience. So my memory of late 80s Warsaw was that it was the Soviet soldiers were quite visible on the streets. These were not only the Soviet military bases somewhere in the middle of Poland, but also the Soviet officers, all these liaison officers, which were, for me as a kid who was interested in military vehicles, etc., quite visible on street of Warsaw. Then there was Russian bookshops, which I liked very much, many of them in Warsaw. I was visiting them, I was buying all those Russian books, and then there was Russian TV, which I was watching. This very late perestroika Soviet TV like brought me into this Russian zone of culture, to the Ruski Mir, until today. I am like an orphan of this late Soviet of Russian culture in Warsaw. In the high school, we had trips to Soviet Union. So Soviet Union and Russian culture were like, and the Russians were quite present in my direct experience. And then in the same time, in late 80s, the Americans appear in Warsaw. Since my mom was working with the Solidarity opposition, those Americans were visible to me. They were coming with money, paying to the workers for maintaining strikes in '88. So these were very visible actors. And then, of course, they come as Mariel brigades, which Michał mentions. But Michał's perspective is very, again, Polish, common sense, psychological. Like, oh, they're convincing. They were convincing. Everyone liked them. But from the structural point of view, I think that this was a question of argument on psychological the sentiment. This was a structural violence. This was this was an economic process, transaction between the Soviets and Americans, and this was a takeover of Polish economy, basically. So I think this is the way, of course, we Poles cope with this transfer of Poland from the Soviet to broadly defined Western sphere of influence. But personally, for me, this is a very naive perspective, which Michał beautifully reconstructs. But actually, as a sociologist, I would add to this objective factors, which made Poles simply force Poles to accept what was happening, and all those narratives which Michał reconstructs are, for me, ways of coping with inevitable, with the structural, geopolitical, geoeconomic violence which was imposed on Poland as a transaction between the Soviets, and the bankruptcy of Poland was also, I think, an important element of this process, which could be emphasized. So and maybe finally I would agree with some of the remarks of Florian, especially this that Michał buys a lot of this intelligentsia anti-communist interpretations, especially from the late communist periods, which is, again, I would say that this is a nice reconstructions of those of the mood, which I also remember. I was part of this. But as a critical sociologist now, I would just suggest that I would maybe not just in the same way, but anyway, I would try to now reconstruct this and try to like somehow also look a bit critically at this orientalization already emerged within the anti-communist solidarity milieus towards communism, and today I see it as a funny attempt of somehow isolating this anti-communist elites from the system that they were living in. They were pretending that they are not part of the Soviet camp of the Soviet bloc, simply by adapting all those slogans, all those anti-communist narratives. But from the structural point of view, they were part of the Soviet system until 1989. I think that we also, at least I am now more and more convinced that we look at solidarity until 1989 as a part of the Soviet communist system, because this is the only way of understanding why it collapsed so suddenly in 1989. This is the important question which Michał asks. Why there was this sudden fall of this communitarian spirit, which until 1989? And the answer is that because Michał suggests that late communism lost its communitarian spirit, this capability of like abuse narratives, but and of course solidarity was the main actor which maintained this ability to produce a communitarian values, but in the same time solidarity was only possible within communist system because it referred to the communist values, and once those communist values were gone, there was also no solidarity. So I think this is the important paradox which most Poles, especially this critical of communist intelligentsia members, don't accept, because the entire narrative was based on the legitimization of the Soviet Union. Okay, so I will stop here and hope that we can continue later, discuss those or maybe other issues.
Thank you very much so much for your comment and your thoughts about the book. Michał, do you feel like replying very briefly to the comments, or
Very briefly, if you let me just very briefly, this was
your connection seems the best?
fantastic to listen to all those,
Maybe turn off your video.
all those remarks. Isn't it stable enough?
I
Yeah,
think
maybe
there's a storm in Warsaw.
Okay, let's. Oh. I think that the situation is not like superbly brilliant. I hope that you hear me, Elisa. In case you lost, just let me know. I just see you briefly. To what Asia mentioned about the title. I must say, and this is it was very important to me when writing the book, to make it as popular as possible, at the same being as scientific as possible. So this is a sort of an attempt at creating something that combining those two very different elements. And that's the reason why I think that Dziki Wschód as a title, well, in my intention, had no connection with colonial thinking whatsoever. Nevertheless, it's most probably a good point that when translating, it has to be very much taken into consideration. Florian, thank you very much. I really think that those were brilliant comments. I especially like this very thing about what was particularly Polish in this Transformacja po polsku. And I think that I'm exactly at this point when trying to reach this comparative perspective at Hungary and Poland, asking myself constantly on and on and on what was like so Hungarian in Hungarian transformation and so Polish about Polish transformation. I'm still not sure whether I found any sort of good answer. Nevertheless, again, I think that this book was meant to just question sort of status quo that we have in like sort of stable. I wouldn't say that consensus probably is not the best word, but just to be as provocative at the same time, within, let's say, boundaries of what's acceptable in scholarly discourse. And finally, what Tomek mentioned, and it was this very last thought of yours, I think it's brilliant. And very many people tend to have this sentiment towards solidarity in the 90s, like, oh my God, why solidarity was so also, let's say, became quickly as maybe not that much institutionally, but why in the 90s. And that's exactly the answer you gave is exactly the answer I would give as well. That is, if there was no communism, there would be absolutely no solidarity. So once the communism or the like state socialism is gone, there is no place for solidarity in its form as it used to work, as it was created. And I must say that I heard when you mentioned the sort of anthropological piece to an extent and naive at the same time. I think I was openly naive when I used trying to be as skillful as possible, but I really like to use works of Wincjusz Narojek, for that matter, very important anthropologist in Poland, and using the tools he created for finding my own historical, and that was also something that Florian mentioned. So yeah, historization of the 90s is also very much in there. So briefly, those are my responses. Thank you very much for your input. Very thankful for that.
Thank you, Michał, for your reply. So now it's the time for a very quick Q&A. So we're going to take questions from the audience. Are there any questions already at this moment? Please feel free to raise hand or to write it in the chat if you wish. if there are no questions for him, I will actually have one to Michał, because I know your research past, so to say, so your research background, you were actually specialized in political biography, so you're already focusing on individuals, so how they act on a public level. I was wondering to which extent that helped somehow, so this personal approach to something, or like researching from this biographical, to which extent that actually helped you writing the book from this bottom-up perspective.
Thank you for this question. I must say it's sort of well, to a certain extent, funny experience once you're approaching 40 and you find yourself a piece of history, which probably is absolutely a very normal thing to get through, right? I'm simply at this point when I finally realized that I'm also one of those, and I must say it really was a lot of fun, because I think that. And thank you very much, Asha, for mentioning that. I really think this vigor and this, energy in writing and, in the research, in teaching is we need. And I think it comes from the passion that is. I think it's one of the features of well, me being a historian, I think, and I must say that this very personal experiences I had with the 90s, I was I very much wanted to include myself as an author, and I must say I was cheeky up to the point that I made this, well, the moment that I was born in the very first pages of the book. And I think it was sort of, an Easter egg just for myself and for a couple of good friends of mine. But at the same time, it really was an effort at being really very serious in creating the narrative. I wouldn't quite agree with what Florian mentioned, that I refrain from creating any sort of narrative. I think there'd be too much to say. I was at some point really I limited myself, that's for sure. But at the same time, I because that was very first time for me that I could have written something from the perspective that I remember the actual thing, that the moment that they were happening, and that exactly means that I have this situation of being at the same researcher and at the same potential the person that went through all that. All in all, to cut long story short, I must say that it's a very exhilarating experience, and I must say that once I started with this effort and this attempt at writing the history of transformation from 86 till 93, I very much think of going even like closer to our times. So I think about writing this, let's say, the history of the first 15 years of Poland to, let's say, somehow somewhere till 2005, maybe. Because I think socially, politically, this moment when exactly, I mean, firstly 2004, so joined, I remember very well, and I must say, very personal memories with this 1st of May 2004, very, very intimate and very, very personal, very also like a piece of my personal story. 2004 and 2005 and especially this political turn in Poland really marks a very vivid end of one story. I have this feeling that the 2005 is already a very much a closed chapter in Polish history, and it's always very it's also kind of cool once you set the rules in this very new, well, very new. Probably for the sociologist, it's really very cheeky thing to say, because sociologists were very much already into the field of researching on 90s up to 2005 and on. But I think that for a historian, really is something new. And I must say that this element of this personal story, personal experiences is for me, it brought a lot of fun, and I think it was used neatly. And finally, the thing that this and Florian, thank you very much for this remark, that using it in more sort of academically oriented writing will still be a challenge for me. So this is let me just put a full stop at this point. Thank you.
There's a question from Florian. I think it will be also the last question in this discussion. So
okay, no, if that's the case, I would not want to take the screen from others who have not had the opportunity to ask. So if there's anyone else, I would love to leave the screen for you.
That's a nice move. So is there another question? So yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Michał, for a very interesting book talk. I have not read the book yet, but I was wondering, whenever you present a book in a purely Polish audience, and you will have a lot of like eyewitnesses among the audience, like in this case, Tomasz Zarzycki, right? Zarycki. What are the common questions of the audience about what you've written? I mean, some people say the eyewitness is the main enemy of the historian, right? So what experience did you make with this kind of audience? Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question. I must say it really happens. Happened a lot that I had involved myself in a fierce discussion with those reading the moment. I must say that it's a very humbling experience. All in all, that what I am, for example, it actually happened last Monday, so a week ago. A week ago, I was in Toruń. And I had this fantastic opportunity to discuss it with the academics from Toruń, and there was also Senator Jan Wyrowiński, one of the leaders of Solidarity, old guard, one can say, from Toruń, and he was I was blatantly critical towards Balcerowicz, to simplify it up to the extent. Whereas he felt like he felt like this urge that he really knew to show how it really was, this sort of Rankian way that we all know. And I must say that once you simply can handle this emotionally, as it comes to facts, we don't really differ much. And he asked me, why aren't you really happy with the country that you have now? And I told him, well, I really do love my country, and I think that it really is a fantastic thing. There is totalitarian sort of dictatorship in Poland. That's out of the question. But you really have to just take into consideration that this generational the difference between you is a very natural thing. So like your ceiling is not my ceiling, right? And I must say that probably he was not really convinced, but I think I really like to build that sort of understanding. And this is also that I already mentioned that I really like to be provocative. And I really think that this is also intellectually inspiring, and this is what this is the only really reasonable way of going about contemporary history, being a little bit provocative, but in a nice manner. I mean, not being like in a silly way, but just do it for a certain cause. And it really helps, and I think it really brings a nice fruits. And as much as I don't believe that we may in the years to come end up with this very cohesive way of thinking about transformation, I think that in some 15, 20 years there will be some sort of consensus that okay, if I were to draw it, let me phrase it quickly, it would probably be this: transformation really great success. This success brought Poland from the state of dictatorship and undemocracy towards civil society and democracy. At the same time, it really very much widened this class strata, and it opened up a completely new chapter in the story of divisions within Polish society, which is, well, fair to say, and it really is very far from just this very bold, very bold statement that it was all rubbish, it was all like a hidden transaction, which, by the way, and Tomek Zarycki pointed it out very nicely, that, on this macro level, on this macro structural level, well, this sort of transactional way of thinking about the transition, about transformation, is not completely unfounded, to put it that way. But I must say that in the very last sentence, let me say that I really very much like it, because I really like the fact that this is already history, but a living history, and I think it's great.
Thank you for your answer, and thank you so much to all of our discussants for your insights, for your thoughts on Michał's book, which I hope will be published in English also, because I think it's a valuable contribution to the understanding of Polish history. And I mean, I don't know if we have any more announcements from PSA, maybe just two, that we actually have 2 calls open. So one's the Aquila Polonica Article Prize, and the other one is the Graduate Student Research Award. So if you are interested in applying, we still take applications. And if you aren't a PSA member yet, we invite you to become one. And Carolina just posted the link into the chat. Jan, Carolina, do you have anything to add from PSA perspective here? No? Okay, so then I wish you a wonderful day or wonderful evening, depending on your location. Thank you very much again for coming, and have a nice summer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. And